Welcome to the KISC My Health Radio show series on Building Fortunes Radio. KISC My Health is brought to you by the universally recognized Cranberry King, Captain Cran Man Stephen Lukawski. Over the past 30 years, Stephen has worked with North American dietary supplement companies in the nutraceutical industry. His efforts and connections generate ingredient sales through innovative delivery systems and effective marketing and brand management strategies. Today on KISC My Health, Stephen is joined by guest host Peter Mingils. Make sure you check out previous KISC My Health episodes at www.buildingfortunesradio.com or KISCMyHealth.com. Along with our marketing partners, we are here to help our customers improve their health, build their businesses, and make the world a better place. At KISC My Health, we know how much your health and your business means to you and the people important to you. So spread the word, tell another friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world. Now, on to our show with your hosts, Captain Cran Man and Peter Mingils. Take it away, Peter.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingils here. You are listening to us on the KISC My Health Radio show on the Building Fortunes Radio Network. My name, again, is Peter Mingils. We started this a long time ago on the Building Fortunes Radio side, and I always like to tell this very short story for our listening audience because we always have new people listening in. And people might be wondering, where did that KISC My Health thing come from? Well, it started when I was doing some radio shows with Jim Turner. Jim Turner was an attorney over in Washington, D.C., runs an organization called Citizens for Health. They are smaller than they were way back then or way back when, but citizens.org is their domain name. And Jim Turner was an original Ralph Nader Raider. So for those people who haven't heard that name for a while, you know Ralph Nader was a great consumer advocate if you like the stuff that he did, and that's another whole story. But Jim Turner and I did about a decade's worth of radio shows on Fridays at noon Eastern time, and they were great. They're still up on the Building Fortunes Radio side. He was a wonderful gentleman, knew a lot about dietary supplements, consumer advocacy, just stuff. He was great. And then all of a sudden, he passed away. It was in January of 2022. We were kind of negotiating the COVID thing and the vaccine thing and the government control thing and censorship and a whole bunch of other things. And when he passed away, he left a hole in the Building Fortunes Radio schedule. Plus, I lost a mentor. I could always call Jim and get like a logical, reasonable, like really great answer. So I begged the people over at Citizens to find me a replacement. It took them over a year and a half almost. I was doing replays because I couldn't let go. And they brought me James Gormley. And that's really where this story starts. James Gormley was a publisher, great man. I was learning a little bit about him. This is in January of 2024. And we did a couple of radio shows together. He was the president of Citizens. And we did a couple of radio shows together. And then, and this is where this really gets close to getting started on this radio show, he said, "Can I have a guest?" And I said, "Sure." "And who's your guest?" "Stephen Lukawski." I'm not from the industry, so I went like, "Stephen who?" "Stephen Lukawski." And I said, "Okay." "He's known as Captain Cran Man." I'm like, "Okay, sounds interesting." "The King of Cranberries." I'm like, "Okay, that sounds good. So we'll talk about cranberries?" I'm like, "Okay, let's do a radio show." So, of course, I don't know that much about cranberries. So I was an active listener, and James and Stephen did a really great radio show, and I took notes, and I joined his LinkedIn, and over the next couple of months, I became a Stephen Lukawski fan, like a Captain Cran Man fan. He had great posts. He was introducing wonderful things and always super-duper positive. And then, tragically, in August of 2024, James Gormley passed away. This was a really sudden thing. I did the right thing. I called Stephen, and I said, "Stephen, did you hear?" He did, because he was working with James actively at that time. And he said, "You know, we got to do a memorial for James Gormley." Of course. So we'll do a radio show about James. And somewhere in there, this is where the KISC My Health comes in, I told him about our KISC book I was writing. And KISC for me, because I do like sales training and productivity training, and I'm in my own head a whole bunch of times, KISC for me stood for the Keep It Simple Circle. It's a great way to keep yourself focused and all that sort of good stuff. And I said, you know, doing this KISC book, and Stephen said, "Oh, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run a KISC My Health radio show series." And I said, "Okay," because anytime Stephen's excited about anything, I'm all in. So like, okay. Well, all right, we're going to do memorial for James Gormley, and can you help me with this KISC My Health thing? He says, "Absolutely." You know, James Gormley, even though he passed away and Jim Turner passed away, lots of other people have passed away, there's a lot of people that I know, meaning Stephen, who are actively doing great things in the industry, and I want to make the world a better place and let the world know about this sort of stuff. I can set up these interviews, and let's do KISC My Health. So I bought KISCMyHealth.com. That's KISC myhealth.com for those people who want to spell it. And if you go there, you'll see now over 100 perfectly personal interviews with some of the who's who of the great people in this industry. And today's going to be another one of those editions as I get out of my own way during this introduction. But I want to say thank you to our corporate sponsors, our active and passive listeners, and especially Stephen Lukawski, for whom none of this would have been possible because he has all the connections, does all the extra work, does a lot of great things to be able to help make the world a better place in the natural ingredients and related industries. So, Stephen, thanks for all the great things that you do, and let's kick off our KISC My Health Radio show.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome to everyone who's listening to KISC My Health Radio, where today we're going to have another fantastic interview. And I'm telling you that we've done over 100 interviews so far, Peter, since James passed away. And since then, we've had other people move on to this, stairway to heaven. And, so this show really is in honor of those who are not with us today, giving an opportunity for natural product leaders in their industry to shine onto our audience their story, their career, how they were able to climb the ladder of success, both personally and professionally. And this show is not about products. It's not about services. It's about people. It's about people who have gone the extra mile. These people are transformational leaders. They're history makers, world change makers. They have actually put footprints in the sand for other people to follow behind while creating their own. But they're leading the way, showing that only through true grit, determination, passion, commitment is anything possible in life. You just put your mind to it. How they do one thing is how they do everything. And these are definite role models for everyone to follow as they climb this ladder in life, to the highest level that they can. And when I say personally and professionally, I mean that. Now, when we talk about the show itself, we have to recognize our sponsors, because without their help, this not-for-profit radio show would not exist. Their support has been so meaningful. And so we give thanks to Pure Brands, who's one of our current sponsors today. They're the organic sweetener company out there since 2008. They've been out there leading the way in the organic world and debunking the junk of sugar and trying to make this world a healthier and better place to live for all of us. And then, of course, RFI Ingredients has been right there with us over the last while. I give thanks to Jeff and his team over there at RFI for their support. Heather Wayner and the Charlie's Angels, they were there right from the beginning to help us lift this show to where it is today. And so we thank them very much. And then, of course, we're going to introduce a new sponsor to the show. That'll be a surprise during our commercial break. But it's another step in my journey to raising awareness on the benefits of cranberry beyond UTI, showing that cranberry and all these other wonderful berries that that are being produced out there, these world of polyphenols, are a daily consumption, for everyday living and healthy longevity. So that, without further ado, I just want to mention also too, it's important. We've had some people pass away recently. And when I say these are, again, natural product leaders, they carry the torch for me, to pass on to others. We lost Michael McGuffin this year from American Herbal Product Association. And it was a sad day. We lost Dean Parks from Canada, one of our super champion Canadians, who just recently passed away. And I want to give shout out to Dean and his family for the loss. And we're here today, gone tomorrow. So what we do today makes a significant impact in this world. People remember you not how much money you make, but who you are and what you have done for this world. And that's all these people I'm talking about have left me a great impression of what they've accomplished. So thank you to everyone out there who are supporting the KISC radio show. All right, so with that being said, our next guest on KISC My Health Radio a super champion. I've been trying to get her on the show for a while, and just, and I'm so happy that she's found the time, all right, to be here with us because she's so popular. She's out there running around the rest of the United States and other parts of the world with her talent and making a difference in this natural product industry with her talent. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Felicia Stoler to KISC My Health. Welcome, Felicia.
Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
Yes, Peter and I we sat back and we said, there's a lot of super champion women out there. And we have to, let's really reach out and do a deep dive this summer and really bring out the creme de la creme, right, the best in class, and who we've already brought in so many before in the past. But let's start focusing on the media side, your media influencer. And congratulations on the job that you have done up to now, Felicia.
Yeah, it's. I got to tell you, it's a little overwhelming and humbling, to think about where my life has been in the last 28 years and how many people I've had the opportunity to impact, directly, indirectly, from every media interview I did, whether it's TV, radio, magazine article, book chapter, podcast. I've been a college professor. I've spoken in front of large groups at conferences, at marathons. It's staggering. I can't, to think about that. It's really, a lot of people go through their life, with only a very small circle of influence. And I'd like to hope that, every message that I've ever given somebody in those opportunities has been something of value.
Yeah, you certainly touched my life very positive and significant way. So I thank you. But before we do this deep dive story of Felicia Stoler, we're going to break for a commercial and then come right back and let's get right into it.
Here we go.
Commercial break here.
You've been listening to the KISC My Health Radio show on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. This KISC My Health Radio show is also available on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, as well as dozens of other platforms connected to the internet. If you are interested in the world's best cranberry product line, you will want to get your products from Captain Cran Man himself, Stephen Lukawski, from Planet Cranberry on planetcranberry.com. The website will be online before the end of the summer in 2026. Start your ordering and your inquiring about Planet Cranberry now by contacting Stephen on LinkedIn or by phone or text. The King of Cranberries, Stephen Lukawski, has always been your best source of products and information, so now it's time to get your products from Planet Cranberry directly. With Planet Cranberry and Stephen Lukawski, you can make your world a better place and help others do the same. Now, back to our KISC My Health radio show. Take it away, Peter.
All right, we are back. Planet Cranberry is announced, and we'll learn more about that in future radio shows as well. Stephen, take it away.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. But before we continue on here, I would like to maybe let our listening audience know a little bit more about Felicia, who she is, and why she's on this show. All right, and if I can, Felicia, I'm going to take a couple minutes here just to read a little bit of background to our audience about who you are. All right, so Dr. Felicia Stoler is a nationally recognized lifestyle medicine clinician, a nutritionist, exercise sociologist, author, and media personality whose no-nonsense, evidence-based approach to health has made her one of America's most trusted wellness voices. Over nearly 3 decades, she's built a distinguished career at the intersection of science, advocacy, and entrepreneurship, helping individuals and communities improve their health through practical strategies in nutrition, fitness, and behavior change. A familiar face on national television, Dr. Stoler has appeared on The Today Show, Good Morning America, CNN, and Fox News, served as a feature expert on Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and hosted TLC's Honey, We're Killing the Kids. She is the author of Living Skinny and Fat Genes, and the sought-after keynote speaker who has presented to audiences ranging from U.S. governors and foreign health ministers to medical fellows, Fortune 500 executives, and elite athletes. She's a passionate advocate for plant-based medicine, mental health, and healthy aging. Her expertise is grounded in a rare breadth of academic training. Dr. Stoler earned her Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Tulane University, followed by a Master of Science in Applied Physiology and Nutrition at Teachers College, Columbia University, where she's also completed her dietetic internship and earned a registered dietitian nutritionist credential. She holds a doctorate in clinical nutrition from Rutgers School of Health-Related Professions, where her doctoral research focused on worksite wellness. She is a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine, a fellow of Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, and also board director, certified diplomat of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Her mission is very simple: helping everyone achieve longevity, thrive, and happiness. Welcome again, Lisa, to the show. I appreciate it, Lisa.
Thank you. I know it's a lot of alphabet soup at the end of the name.
Yeah. Well, Felicia, how long have we known each other now? It's like,
oh my God, it's like well over 15 years. It could be, it's probably like more like 18 or 20 years.
I would think it's probably about 30, 40. No, I would say it's probably about 1,000,000. Yeah, I'd say about 1 million kilos of cranberry sold between now and then. Right?
Yeah.
If I look at
I know.
And you made such a difference in the cranberry world. You really did, when I met you. And
well, I mean, I'm definitely, I definitely, like, I'm a huge advocate for, nutrient, like ingredients coming from real foods, right? And cranberries have so many, wonderful and dynamic properties that are unique to that plant.
Yeah, and it's beyond. For me, it's been beyond UTI, where I've always been trying to take cranberry beyond that. We have so many people suffering from UTIs every year, and there's it's a growing concern. But at the same time, there's so many other benefits of cranberry that we talked about. But the whole world, in the world of longevity, beyond cranberry. You sort of stepped in, and you've really been a professional in terms of a health advocate of looking after your body, spirit, and mind. And so for our audience who are listening today, Felicia, can you we'll start back. We know where you are today, and we're going to get to that in greater detail. But let's talk about where you were born, a little bit about your family background.
Sure. So I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My parents moved to Freehold, New Jersey when I was like 3 or 4 years old. My father was the first one in his family to go to college, and he went to college, a small college in New Jersey called Rider. It was then called Rider College. It's now called Rider University. And he and my mom wanted to get out of Brooklyn and try the suburbs like a lot of people of their generation did. And so I was raised, in a very modest family, not, my mom cooked all the time when we went out to eat. It would be, it was a treat if we got to go out once a week for food. We didn't keep soda in our house. We ate, it's funny, we ate a lot of canned vegetables, because that's what my parents could afford. They had one car between the two of them. And, I like to remind my younger brother that, he grew up when when he came into our lives, and what he remembers is when my parents had more means, but we were very, of modest means. And so, I'm always very sensitive to that, when I'm speaking to people about nutrition. And a lot of my work, even my volunteer work, even before I changed careers and got into the health field, was always around food and food insecurity, because without food, it's tough when you don't have a full belly, right? And, understanding the relationship between disease and food and nutrient intake, it's very complex. So I'm really grateful to be in this space, because at the end of the day, I'm just trying to help people be healthier, right? I'm not selling them something they don't need. I'm not trying to take away. I'm trying to, enhance and improve their lives.
Yeah. People have to meet you halfway, though, too. You can give great advice to others, but, they don't look after themselves. And that's unfortunate, too, because, healthcare costs have gone up. Food costs have just gone through the roof today. So it's very difficult for a lot of people to eat healthier. And, because, especially with...
there's a lot to be said for personal accountability. This is something that in more recent dialogues, especially on social media, I just, I try to reinforce this to people, because A lot of folks, they confuse public health messaging with what individuals do on an individual level. And, there is some accountability for the decisions that we make. And it's not just in food, it's in physical activity too. It's in, yes, there are certain things that we don't always have a lot of control over. I can't make more hours appear in a 24-hour day, and certainly people have either responsibilities or things that maybe don't allow them to get as much rest as they should, right? And we know that they need. But, there is this level of accountability and personal accountability and what we, do for ourselves and for, the people around us. And, as somebody who's raised my children while I was going through graduate school, I started grad school before my oldest child was born. And, I like to say that I took everything that I academically learned and I tried to do that with my children. So I hope I live long enough to see that return on investment, that they live long, healthy lives free from disease, or as best as possible.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit. We talked about, you talked briefly about your mom and dad and, and one car in the family and, and eating out of a can, for beans and that, it's, I think our family is all gone. That generation, my family, same thing. They put, my parents put food on the table and what best they could, clothes on their back, a roof over their head. And at that time, you couldn't ask for much more other than the fact that they gave you life. And here they are trying to love you and protect you and look after you. And that's what I grew up, that household. I never looked at what we didn't have. We always looked at what we had because we didn't know what we didn't have.
I was just going to say, we didn't even know any better, honestly. It's not like social media today or media in general. We had black and white televisions and TVs were not on there was not programming 24 hours in a day.
So, there's a lot of brothers out there like you have, that didn't grow up in that era maybe, or you came along and they just didn't know, what sacrifices parents have made to get where they are today. And, but I'm just going to share, that I had some really good fond memories as a child. Do you remember some of your fond memories?
Oh, I have a lot of fond memories of my childhood. I definitely do. I have fond memories of, when we got to go on a vacation, which I could probably count on one hand how many we actually ever really went on. But, family vacations, I know family holidays were a big deal in our family. My sister and I were just laughing about how my grandmother was great. She sort of made it seem like it was a really big treat if we were the ones who got chosen to wash the dishes at the end of a meal. They had us brainwashed. We were fighting over washing dishes. Could you imagine? They didn't have a dishwasher, and we fought over who got to clean the dishes. It was very smart on their behalf to figure out, how to make that enticing for us as kids. I have my grandmother was, her mother was one of 8 children, and my great-grandmother had immigrated from Austria, and we had this cousins club, and once a year we would get together at a park in New Jersey, and all the descendants and all their kids, everybody would get together. I have very fond memories of that. Which was just nice. And some of us have chosen to, we've chosen to, stay in touch with each other. And it's great. I don't even remember how many years ago we had sort of our last family picnic, but it was definitely, it was bittersweet. It just became very overwhelming and people have moved across the country. But we have a Facebook group, so we all tried to communicate there. And we're all very respectful and supportive of each other. And yeah, it's just nice.
Great that you have a Facebook group for the family home. It's your own group, and only your family can see this, right? It's limited to your family.
Well,
right?
I guess people. I don't think it's a public page. I think people it's a group. It's definitely a closed group, but it's certainly nice. And I was raised doing volunteer work. That was something very important that my parents had instilled in me. I literally, if I tell you that I've been working since I'm 12 years old, I've been working since I'm 12 years old. My first job, which you'll appreciate, hopefully, I was babysitting for a neighbor. And, lo and behold, the little girls that I babysat with, one of them is Idina Menzel, who is, of Wicked fame, the singer. The Broadway actress. Yeah, when she sort of was coming up in the ranks, and I remember reading an article about her in the New York Times Magazine. I called my mom. I said, oh, my God, is this the same, like, girl that I babysat for as a little girl? They literally lived 2 houses away. They had moved away, but for a while, that was my first babysitting job, was babysitting for her and her sister.
That is so cool. You know, it's like you just never you babysit, right? You never know what your friends are at school and what they become, right? And
exactly.
But Felicia, I'm sure they're saying that about you too. I knew Felicia. Oh my God, look at her! Look at her job now. Look what she's doing. Oh my God! So I knew her so well. Right? So yeah, everyone wants in their life, you know. It seems. And but your parents were. It sounds like they were superhero parents. You know, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, they were very, very traditional. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my father was in the hospitality industry. He was an accountant who he went from like one company to another, started doing work in real estate, and went from residential real estate into the hotel industry, and he worked for Harry Helmsley, was his first hospitality job, and then he started a company with some other folks. So I guess that entrepreneurial spirit came from him, but I learned a lot about hospitality, which really transfers into any kind of service business. You know, when you're customer-facing or consumer-facing, you know, you need to be kind to people, nice, smiley, helpful. You know, even though he owned and ran hotels, he never walked around with an ego like other people that we, you know, might have come across. You know, he was always the nice, kind boss and did a lot for the people that worked with him, and that's why his employees followed him, you know, lots of places, because he was always, you know, he was like everybody's dad, you know, in the workplace. And so he was always very humble. It's interesting how in New York he had lots of interactions with celebrities. In fact, one of my, you know, some of them he really like legit knew, and, you know, he was very kind to them. But, you know, one of my favorite stories is my father showing Bono, you know, of U2 fame, the Mark Hotel when it had first opened. And my father thought his name was Bono, like he was thinking Sonny Bono, so he really didn't know who he was. And he's talking to him, and he's like, so what are you in New York for? And he's like, well, you know, I'm speaking at the UN General Assembly tomorrow, and I'm in a band, and we're playing at the Meadowlands tomorrow. Like, my dad had just no idea who the guy was. And then, you know, he calls his general manager at one of his other hotels and said, who is Bono? And he's like, Jeffrey, call Felicia. Bono. It's Bono from U2. He is to, you know, your daughter what Elvis was to you. And so
but it's so innocent and so beautiful.
So innocent, yeah. So that's just to give you an idea of, you know, the kind of person that he was. He just, it wasn't that he wasn't impressed or nice. He just, like, there could be no ego when that person's, like, importance or fame does not register with you. It sort of reminds me of seeing something, a few years ago, where Oprah Winfrey went into the home of, I guess, some very religious Jewish family that, like, they never let their kids watch TV. And so they didn't know who Oprah was.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's how it works in some households. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, you remember, you know, as a child, we all had, you know, people would always say, what do you want to do when you grow up? You know, that was a famous question, you know, back then. And here you are, just a kid, right? And, you know, do you remember what dreams
I said I wanted to be a doctor. It's actually very funny. I used to volunteer in a hospital for many years. I was a candy striper. You know, that would be like a non-politically correct sort of term, not PC now, right? But, you know, with the little, like, red and white striped uniform, it was very, you know, whatever. And but I really enjoyed it, and I liked everything about it. It's interesting because I didn't do well in chemistry in high school, although I loved science, and I even took, like, an extra year of biology because I liked it so much. But I just thought, like, you know, how am I going to go to medical school if I couldn't handle high school chemistry? So I just sort of, like, pivoted into political science. And so, you know, then I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and I got out of school and I worked for a big Wall Street law firm, which was great because I had the most impeccable business skills anybody could ever wish for working there. And then I went to go work at ABC News doing licensing for the network news division. And when I was there, I really appreciated the value of the media and its impact on people, because I my role was dealing with all the aftermarket use of news footage at the network level. So this is like not what it is today. There was no internet. People used to call on the phone, or they would send in a fax request for something. And my job was mostly to deal with other TV stations. They would like to a lot of the TV stations would share footage with each other, but it had to go through a legal process to do that and an acquisition process. And so that was what I did. But I always would also get lots of emails from people that would see, a segment on Good Morning America or on World News Tonight or Primetime Live. And, they were mostly the health segments got the most inquiries the day after something aired. And I really realized that, people really look to mainstream media for their source of information. And again, this is all pre-internet. And I remember speaking with the woman who hires all the producers and the on-air talent, and I said, I'm thinking about going and getting a master's in journalism. And she said, there are a dime a dozen around here, Felicia. Why don't you go to school for something you're really passionate about and see if you can't work that back into media? And that's literally what I did. I ended up looking into the program at Columbia University because they had a double master's program in nutrition and exercise science. And I felt like I needed to master both ends of the energy equation, right, when it comes to health and the body. And I went and I sat in on classes because I looked at their curriculum. It was very intimidating. They made it very lucrative for me to apply. I got a conditional acceptance, with a requirement to take 5, science classes. I had to get a B or better and do above the mean on the GREs, and then I could get into their school, and that's exactly what I did. I got straight A's in all those classes, and I did decent enough on my GREs, and there you have it. I was probably like a BC student in college, and then I was, an A- B+ student in both of my graduate school programs. So it's and I've gone to excellent schools, but it is rather staggering to think about how much money I've spent on my education. My brain is worth a lot of money, which is why taking care of it's really important to me.
Yeah, no, listening to your story here, your educational journey, I'm also hearing too that you grabbed the life by its horns. You said, I'm going to make something out of my life. Yeah, and to work over at ABC, I don't know how you got that job. Tell people what you actually have done, to get recognized, because there's so many other people like you out there. Well, not like you, but so many other people out there who want to be recognized. And how did you do it? How did the world?
You mean like how I got the job? I mean, the job at ABC, I got like a friend of a friend mentioned that they had an opening, and I went to go work there. That's legit, like how that happened. And I was a news junkie, so it was great. But, I will tell you that when I came out of working for the law firm that I did, because they were an international firm and they were considered like a top 10, white shoe, that's what they used to call it, law firm, I could have gotten a job in anything. I had opportunities to go to Miami and go work in banking. I had, people in other cities said to me, your work ethic is so, the way you were trained is like somebody that works in the analysts that work in Wall Street. You are trained to work, I'm not saying it's healthy, but when you're in your 20s, it's okay, to work 16-hour days, 18-hour days, and very meticulous, very, very, dotting your I's and crossing your T. There's a definite work skill of efficiency because you used to have to bill every 15 minutes of your time. So there was no messing around, but, they demanded excellence. So that's what I learned, was delivering excellence and customer service. And because I also was very open to learning computer technology, I learned a few extra things at the law firm that gave me extra clout at the law firm that allowed me to do other things beyond standard paralegal work, which let me do marketing, let me do client development work. And, so when I went to ABC, they already knew I had this great training, and for me, I loved it because I'm a news junkie. So the idea that I could be, a floor or two above a live evening broadcast, and I could go watch it every day if I wanted to, or that they tape news magazines. I mean, the news industry is very, interesting, and I got to work on projects where I was looking at archival footage from before I was born, and like really I helped work on putting together content for what became known as the Century Project, which was a multi-video series that ABC News created at the end of the last century, and so that was great to know that I had impact on that, and I got to do that. But the whole idea of going into news, into nutrition and fitness. I mean, I worked full time at ABC News for 2 years and went to school full time at night. Like when I talk to people about like balancing and juggling, I did it, And then after my daughter was born, I had to, give something up. So I gave up the job, and I was lucky that my husband, had enough income that we could live off of his salary, and I could finish up school a little bit faster and, take care of our daughter. So, there is that. And then, the media stuff just happened because I worked in news, because I'd been around it. When I moved to New Jersey, I had the opportunity to get involved with the State Dietetic Association because I had prior media experience. Even though it wasn't the same, I had enough, and that's where a lot of that stuff just started to kick off. And I did for my graduate school, for my doctorate, we had to do a residency. So I did most of it in sports medicine at Rutgers with the medical director for athletics, and I worked with all their teams for about 8 months. And then I finished off at ABC News' medical unit in Boston. They had a formal residency program for physicians. I was the only non-physician that they took in the program, but they did so because I worked at the network before. And so, it really behooved them to have somebody like me there because there were a lot of stories that they covered that were in my wheelhouse of, being within my scope of practice. So that worked out really great. And then I had the opportunity to get a call back because I put in a demo reel the year before for the show Honey, We're Killing the Kids, and somebody from BBC Productions asked me to come in and audition on one of my weekends that I was home from ABC because I had to go to Boston back and forth every week because I had little kids and I just gotten divorced, so that was like a crazy thing. I mean, I've really taken a lot of risks and chances, and they pretty much have all paid off pretty well. So that's sort of how a lot of that media journey started, and then I had also over the years gotten media training, with working with food brands and supplement brands and commodity boards, and I've done work with the State Dietetic Association in New Jersey. I did work with the American College of Sports Medicine, and doing media work also lent itself to doing advocacy in Washington, in Trenton, New Jersey. I've got no problem talking to legislators. I have friends that are legislators. Like, I'm not moved by it. I ran for Congress in 2018 in New Jersey because I wanted to make a difference, in health and healthcare and people's lives, and recognizing that small businesses make up most of the businesses in this country, and that they don't have a lot of representation and they face a lot of challenges, but those are what keep our communities going.
Yeah, I just love your passion. Passion for life. You're passionate. You're so ambitious and curious, and
I'm ambitious about doing the right thing for other people. Like it's helping people live healthier lives. Really, again, it's like the food, the physical activity. My dad said people have 3 basic needs: food, clothing, or shelter. If you're in one of those businesses, you'll always have some job, right? So him being in the hospitality and the hotel industry does, it's not just frivolous, or extra, housing. And when there were crises like after 9/11, my father, took in a lot of people in his hotels that were displaced, that lived down in Wall Street, that couldn't go back to their homes. So, there is that level of, providing housing, and food isn't just physical, it is the physical food. It's also explaining to people some foods are better for your health than others, right? What is that relationship between food and disease?
Yeah, but I also believe too. I think we're given a life to live, and it's not meant for us to live without giving back. And I think all our blessings are really meant for us to share with others. And And I truly believe that, because I think the good Lord giveth, the good Lord taketh, and I've seen people who are not alone. They're not here with us today. We don't know why, right? They're gone. They're needed, more so, I guess, upstairs. But, the point I'm making is, for people who are listening, if you have the means to provide, please do. Please give back, all right, and helping those others who are less fortunate, because that's what makes this world so united and helping one another with kindness and gratitude. And, so now I'm looking at your career here. Why did you pick Tulane University?
Oh, funny, because back in the day, we had a college advisor. My parents didn't know from this stuff. We had a college advisor. We took like an SAT prep course, and the guy who ran it offered college advising beyond the high school guidance counselor. And, he sat down with my parents and I and gave us a list of schools that I should apply to. And, it was very different then than what kids do now. There was no like running around the country, touring schools. Like kids take 2 years to go tour. Like it's another, vacation. And when I got into all my schools, we took the top 2 schools that I got into, which were George Washington University in D.C. and Tulane University. And literally a week apart, my dad took me for day trips to both of those schools. We went to Washington first and went to go look at GW, and then we went a week later to go look at Tulane. And on the plane ride back from Tulane, my father said to me, "So do you want to tell me where you'd like to go, or would you like me to tell you where I think you should go?" And I said, "Well, I knew where I wanted to go. I was afraid if I did, I was like trying to play a little reverse psychology. Like if I tell my dad I want to go to Tulane, he's going to tell me GW. So maybe I'm just better off hearing what he has to say and then dealing with it." And sure enough, my father knew me well enough to say that he thought I should go to Tulane University, and I was like relieved. I think he also liked it because it had a real campus and it wasn't a city school. And, even though I got into Rutgers and there were a few other, schools that I had gotten into, I think he really liked the idea that it was, he knew I wanted warm weather. And when we went to look at the campus, we saw some students sitting around a tree having a class with their professor. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, because, we see that, as a parent, I would imagine like that's what I wish I had, type of thing, professor,
But it is funny though, it's like a precursor. I mean, actually, if you look at like all these precursors, I had done some work, as you know, with Tayo and, with Regular Girl and I had given this talk. It happened to have been at today's Dietitian Symposium in New Orleans, and I was the keynote, and it was called What Can Become of a Regular Girl, and I really spoke about like my path and how I ended up where I was. It was kind of ironic that, first of all, I was a candy striper, working dietary, among other things, at a hospital, right? So that's some entree to nutrition and unofficially dietetics. And then I come to the biggest food capital in the United States, or, arguably, you could argue New York or New Orleans, but a big food city, right? New Orleans is a big food city where, at the time I wasn't looking for the same foods I was accustomed to eating in the Northeast. Things were different. So you kind of had to try other foods. So my palate really, enjoyed that. And then, a further joke is that my sorority, their Greek letters are Sigma Delta Tau, which look like the word eat. So it's just very funny that was kind of, where I was going. And before I had gone to graduate school, even I guess before I started working at ABC News, at one point I thought about going to culinary school and becoming a chef. And I really enjoyed cooking on my own when I moved to New York. And my dad kind of talked me out of that, thinking that it was a really hard industry for a woman to be in, and I'm not saying it's not, because it's definitely a hard industry, but it's interesting how dietetics allowed me to get back into that space, and I've always been working out. I was working out in gyms before it was popular. I used to make my mother take me to, was it like Lucille Roberts, like a all women's gym, before I even had a driver's license. I made her drive me to the gym so I could go work out. So I've always been into nutrition and fitness. So it's just very interesting how it's, taken me to where I'm at right now. But, the nice thing is that I moved to New Orleans a year ago. So it is my happy place. It's a wonderful city, and I'm, really thrilled to be able to be living someplace that brings me so much joy. It doesn't take a lot to have a lot of joy here.
New Orleans. Well, for all those living in New Orleans, I think they've gone through real challenging times. With the hurricane that went through there, and
it's a city with a lot of resilience. They've had a lot of challenges, but I'm very intrigued too by the history here. That predates the United States. It's just it has a similar but equal history of Spanish and Caribbean roots, along with French Canadian and France, and how everybody sort of like emerged and purged and continued to immigrate, and how people, they describe the city as being a gumbo because everybody really does live very harmoniously here. It's really a testament to different types of people, and I feel like people are very respectful of each other here, across cultures, across ethnicities, across religions. It is a very special place.
So that's definition of gumbo, right? Because I did not know where the word gumbo really
Gumbo
came
is
from.
Like a soup, it's like a soup.
Yeah.
It starts with, like a roux. A roux is a combination of like a fat and flour, and then you add ingredients in. You can start with vegetables, and you can add in, whatever you want. You can add in fish. People add in sausage. They put in chicken. A lot of times okra goes into gumbo, whether you put rice into it, whether or not you put beans into it. It's really just a little bit of everything, just stirred up, and it just spices, and it just tastes good.
I just love your definition of how you combine the people of New Orleans as a gumbo, right? And I just like how you place that word into their culture.
I can't even take credit for it because they say that all the time here, but it's true.
I ask you, how did you first become involved in the natural products industry?
Well, we have a mutual friend who first called me up and had spoken with me originally about I had applied for a job at a grad school, and what ended up happening was he still had my resume in his file, and just called me up one day and said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I just got done hosting. I'm just finishing up hosting a TV show with the Learning Channel. It's going to go on air." And we spoke about some of the other things that I was doing, and it really started off, I think my first opportunity was being on the Medical Science Advisory Board for GNC. I did that for 2 years. That was very interesting and fun. And then slowly, we started doing earned media opportunities for which included product placements for different supplements and brands. And I've only done work with products and brands that I believe in, that I like, that are within my, I have very rigorous standards for the types of things that I will and won't do. And, even when I worked with GNC, I said, listen, I'm happy to be on your medical advisory board, but I have some hard boundaries of products that you sell that I don't want my face on any, pages marketing. I don't want, and I was a little nervous to tell them that, but they respected it. They really appreciated that, that I was coming from a place of academics and, as I like to say, like at ABC, when we used to tell people that when we couldn't let them use our stuff, because they didn't want to be aligned with other people's work, that there's a whole notion about being impartial, right? It's why I, personally, I'm happy to promote and advocate for brands, but it's the reason why my social media has not turned into an influencer page in that way. I like to say I'm an OG before there was the OG of influencers, but, I choose not to have my social media become, a health food store or a grocery store. It's not about buying this product or that product. It's, these are the things that I like. These are the reasons why. I'd like to debunk misinformation, and that's it. I want to continue to be perceived as being impartial and unbiased as best as possible. There's a lot of people that don't have that, and I have a lot of integrity. I spent a lot of money and a lot of years of my life going to school to get academic training, to do certifications, to, build up professional acknowledgement. Becoming a fellow across 2 organizations is not an easy feat. That requires many years of service. That requires a certain amount of, publishing. There's so much that's, baked into that, and being invited to be part of the first cohort of people to be board certified in lifestyle medicine. Again, when somebody comes to you and says, hey, we're building out this credential based upon the fact that you're so, you're so respected, right, in the nutrition and in the sports medicine space, we'd love for you to partake in this, right? I paid for it. I did everything I had to, but, to be a part of it, was great for me. And it served 2 things. They knew that I had a big mouth, and they knew that I had credibility in these fields. So it did rub off on other people going and getting this credential. And so I like to think that I'm always a little bit ahead of the curve, in terms of being a that's what thought leadership is, right? That's truly what being a thought leader is. It's identifying opportunities that make sense and, being there before other people are.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into that a little bit more here, because our listening audience probably would like some words of encouragement, support, and guidance from you, that you could offer them. But before we get into that part of it, we also are going to get into the part of integrity, because I think you touched a very important thing here. There's a lot of influencers out there that get paid royalties on sales of finished products, and if the consumer is not aware of that some of these people out there actually who are promoting a product get paid. And that's one thing I respect.
Well, they all get paid. That's the funny thing, is that they're all getting paid.
Well, the funny thing is, doing a job and getting paid because of your time and your effort and your professionalism, one thing, okay? That's a given. We all get paid to create a product, right, and put it on the shelf for the consumer. Right. But, to go out there and get a royalty on top of sales, on top of that, right, that's always been a challenge in the industry. Because how do I know someone's not saying something because they're paid to say something, at the end of the day? I look at an like, you are an advocate of a health product based on science. Right. And you look at you see that, like, I'll take, for example, there's a product called Urox out there, UROX. Mm-hmm. Tracy Sipple. She's got 15 clinical studies, and it's all on women's, incontinence. And she has a claim on that. And she spent a lot of money on science and research. And then you'll get some companies that just want to follow the science, and then they just go out there and promote their product, and they create a new brand behind it, and they just reference their studies, right? So to me, the consumer never sees that side, right? If your face is on a product, all right, and you're not your face with patient out there, you've set the guardrails up, which I totally respect. Right? What advice do you give young influencers today if they're going to take on a role of being in the dietary supplement industry, right, and want to support a particular brand?
I think, I'm a little biased. I just wish all these people would go and get some real training on what they're talking about, because it's not cheap. It's not inexpensive. You know what I mean? Like, I want a pilot flying a plane that didn't learn how to fly a plane on a video game. Okay? That is the easiest example I could give you. Right? So if you're going to talk about nutrition, because even before there were influencers, there were things like magazines and books and other people that the news media would bring on TV. And like, the only validity somebody had was that they maybe had a friend and they got invited to be on a TV show. And then they were like, oh, it's seen on the Today Show, and it's like, oh my God, because some booker booked that person, like, that's their credibility? No, like, go, if you want to be an expert, that's like my best piece of advice. If you want to be an expert in nutrition, go to school. Get a master's degree. You don't have to start from scratch, but go get a master's degree. Go do a dietetic internship. Understand how the physiology of the body works. Understand biochemistry. All the students that I taught I taught at the community college. I taught nutrition and health in the nursing program to get over my fear of public speaking, ironically enough, right? That was like one of the first things I did was to face my fear and do that. And I had a lot of local personal trainers that took that class because they wanted the nutrition, right? And I can't tell you how many of them changed their eating habits by the time we were done with class, because when I got done explaining to them that all the protein powders that they were talking about pushing all the time, I'm like, you're over-consuming calories, right? Like you're just over-consuming nutrients. You're not using it in the ratio that your body needs, and everything extra gets stored as fat, dude. So if you want to know why, how to whittle your waist down, eat more plants, I mean, right? Reduce your body fat, It's like it's just funny. There's a lot of stuff that keeps perpetuating in certain industries, and I'm not saying that that science doesn't catch up, because you could look at something like Gatorade and hydration. Like nobody took sports hydration seriously or sports nutrition seriously like prior to the 1970s. People just did it, and thank goodness, right? There's a whole lot of science around that for performance. But you could look at that with the supplement industry in terms of diseases, right? And we look for correlations, and we're looking at deficiencies in diets and nutrients. And, that's the whole point. Supplement is to supplement the diet, right? And we recognize, like you and I were talking about our childhood, like certain foods were not available 12 months of the year. Now you can get everything 12 months of the year. Like 50 or 40 years ago, you couldn't get everything 12 months of the year, Yeah. So you think about what's in season. But I think it's, look, I think that companies that have products that make claims, they should do their own research. And I know some people think like, company-funded research, isn't valid. Well, it's better than no research being done. And quite frankly, if you want to put your money where your mouth is, then do the research on your product and prove that it's effective, right? Prove that it's safe and prove that it does what you say it's going to do, and do testing so that we know that what's on the label is really in the product.
Yeah. And if you're going to be an influencer, yes, you make sure those companies do the right things before you put your name behind it.
Exactly. Because, you have your credibility, whatever you think your credibility is. And, you could be an influencer one day, but like I can still always do what I do for a living. If I want to just still continue to be a dietitian and see patients, I can always do that. That was something that Dr. Tim Johnson at ABC News said to me when we finished up our residency there. He said, "What are you going to do when you're done?" I'm like, "I want your job, Dr. Tim." He's like, "Yeah, everybody wants my job, but the best piece of advice I could give you is to keep your hands in your business. Whatever you're good and you're an expert in, you always keep your hands in your business, because you could be hot one day and not the other." So that's the whole thing with the influencers, right? Like right now, during COVID, that became a tremendous opportunity for people. But, in another year or two, that may go away. And then what are all those people going to do for a living?
Mm-hmm. That
right? I mean, like, what's your skill set?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of they have to pivot. That's what they have to do. But they don't have a solid educational background like you just talked about, right? They're in and out. They're gone. All right? They made a quick, they got out. Right? And so
right. And you don't want to be that person who sold somebody a brand or a product that caused harm, because that could come back to you.
Yeah, that's so true. It's and your reputation is so important out there, that you talk about integrity. So, again, this is all part of who you are. This is why you're that North Star out there, Felicia, in the industry, and you other influencers out there, the guiding light to success, in that profession. So, but before we move on to topic areas such as setbacks, challenges, and leadership skills, and mentorship, the importance of membership, let's break for a commercial, Peter, and wait.
Perfect. Well, we're on the KISC My Health Radio show. We're going to talk a little bit about AI, maybe even as we go into our next section, but here we go.
You've been listening to a special broadcast of the Building Fortunes Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. If you are interested in the world's best AI receptionist and AI business building platform, you will want to get your AI receptionist from humongous.com. Go to the specials page on humongous.com. That's YOUMONGUS.com/specials. Explore how small business owners and major corporations are using humongous AI receptionists to do everything from answering incoming calls to scheduling appointments and even answering customer service questions. Your AI receptionist can do everything from making sure you never miss a call to texting reminders and follow-ups and even upgrading and closing more sales. Your AI receptionists will help you increase your productivity in just about everything. Building Fortunes Radio suggests you have to check them out on the specials page on humongous.com. That's youmongus.com/specials. You can make your world a better place and help others do the same with the AI receptionists at humongous.com. Now, back to our Building Fortunes radio show. Take it away, Peter.
Okay, perfect. We are on the KISC My Health Radio show on the Building Fortunes Radio Network. We're here with Felicia Stoler and Stephen Lukawski, Captain Cran Man from Planet Cranberry. And I know that, Stephen, you had a trajectory for where the radio show interview is going next. But somewhere towards the end or wherever, I'd love for Felicia to be able to introduce something related to AI in any capacity that she wants to, because there's amazing things. And I got to just throw in my little caveat for all those employers out there. If you ever want a one-question answer or one-question resume seeker, you just really have to ask, is this gal from New York or New Jersey and she's on top of her game? That's the one you want. So Felicia, I mean, I just need one line. So you are the perfect example of why, like, if you want the best employee you'll ever have, or the best person to be a business partner with, or the best anything, go get New York, New Jersey girls. So anyway, so that.
Yeah, I know. We got a whole Jersey girl thing going.
They do. They're on
top
let's
of talk about AI while we're out here. So
we could totally talk AI because I'm totally I've become like a master.
All right, let's do it. Let's go.
So if I could jump into that for 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
I listen to a lot of the the techie people, probably like you, and I realize that if I don't learn it, I'm going to be swallowed up by it. So I got to learn it. We're using it, and even with our AI receptionist thing that I referenced a little bit earlier. But there are claims that people are going to use AI to be able to increase the life capacity of people, maybe double or triple. And, and they're talking about new interventions and reinventions or inventions coming with health and nutrition that we just don't know about. And all that really good stuff. Like, there may be some really good stuff. And there's probably some of the challenges associated with it as well. And we all know those two as well. But you can speak of this from probably every angle that's possible, because you could talk about media and AI. You could talk about research and AI. You could talk about hallucinations and BS and AI. You probably are single-handedly somebody who's got their hands in enough things related to AI that we could spend, a whole television series on AI if we wanted to. So I'll let you grab whichever one of those you want and start off that conversation.
Sure thing. Thank you. Well, I mean, I've always been a technology early adopter, like whether it was a gadget, whether it was, learning how to use, going from DOS computers to the first iteration of what looked like graphics. I've always embraced technology. And, I was very skeptical of AI when it first came out. And, but it's like you got to be in it to win it, right? And, understanding and seeing the writing on the wall, I'd say a year and a half ago was when I first started playing with it. At some level, we already have been playing with AI. We don't even realize it. If you use, Gmail will sort of try to finish, a phrase for you, right? Or it'll give you an auto reply response, or our phones do that, right, with spell check, right? So on some level, we've been, introduced to it and we've used it, but, the question is, what do you do with it? And just to give you an idea, I set up a not-for-profit when I moved to New Orleans, and I was thinking, I'm going to have to pay somebody thousands of dollars to build me a website, right, that looks good. No, I used an AI web builder, Replit, and paid a little bit of money, and I built 3 or 4 websites off of that. And then you take it to the next level, and my partner started creating something for him, for me, for ourselves, where, it's like taking everything I do all day long, because a lot of what I do, I'm never monetizing, right? So we built out a platform called Blue.live, BLEU.live, which we're still in the process of tweaking, because we got back from a Rural Health Transformation Summit last week in northern Louisiana, and we see this as an opportunity to really help people that don't have access. I mean, that was the whole point, right, is that at the federal level, we talk about lifestyle medicine interventions and how they are helpful and beneficial, and that by doing them, we can drive down the cost of healthcare, right? Because diet and exercise are the least expensive, least invasive, and most effective ways to prevent and treat most diseases. But if people don't have access to credible information, then they're just on a bad loop of bad information, right? And they don't know where to get it. And then, we've got RFK Jr. saying we want doctors to have more education. Well, that doesn't really matter, because they don't have it already. So all the doctors that are out there don't have it. They don't have a billing code. So if they don't have a billing code, they're not going to they're not going to talk about it, and they only have 10 or 15 minutes to talk to somebody. So, I can tell you that in doing lifestyle medicine and being in dietetics, like my first appointment with somebody is 90 minutes long. Like, you need a long time to do it. Insurance doesn't cover that. So I wanted people that couldn't afford it to get access to this information, right? Like, I'm building a solution to help people, right? Because we have all these barriers that get in people's way. And so we are using AI, but I am clinically going over it. I am making sure I'm putting speed bumps, I'm putting real barriers, I'm being very specific with where the information can be derived to make this work for people, So I have had to check it. I check things. I do use AI to help me with certain writing, but, there's something that AI cannot do. It does not know the lived human experience. It can help you think, it can help you bring information into your sphere faster, and it can help you maybe organize things better. And I know sometimes I like to use it to help me clean up emails, because I might ramble a little bit too much, and I might want it to be more professional and take out the emotion. But, at the end of the day, it can't do everything for you. It can't extend lives right now, but it can provide information to people. But then the question is, where is that gated information coming from? And you were talking about hallucinating. We know, people have, talked about, in lawsuits, for example, it might hallucinate. People use it, you can use it to help you get someplace, but man, you got to check all your cites and your citations. So when I'm doing something with AI and I tell it to give me citations, I'm very specific about what kind of citations I want. I want it peer-reviewed journals. You can go to PubMed and pull out some citations for me. I don't want someone's opinion article in a magazine. That's not a citation, right? So I think that it can do tedious work that people don't want to do, or work that has, just to give you an example, I was at a networking event last week, and somebody from a big hospital system here said that they use AI to do phone calls, follow-up phone calls that doctors used to do but don't have the time to do. Then they pass them on to the pharmacist to remind people to pick up prescriptions after they leave the hospital. And honestly, the pharmacists don't have time to do it, so they use an AI dialer to do it. And they said they have a very high acceptance rate of people talking to the AI dialer. People are told up front it's an AI dialer. They have a choice to stay on the call or hang up the call. And they said that they have, more than 3/4 of the people stay on the call. When technology when done right, when done right, when done right, it can be great. And, it's funny. I've even seen in communications with people, when things are just being auto-generated, auto-generation, I know that, fast. People use that now on social media. Somebody wants to connect with you on LinkedIn, and then 30 seconds later, I'm getting some selling me something. I'm like, do you even read what I do for a living? You're trying to sell me something that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that I do. I'm trying to be kind and be willing to open up to, networking with people, but not to be sold stuff I don't need incessantly.
Yeah, well, automation has destroyed. Yeah, automation has destroyed most platforms like LinkedIn. It's kind of become a pitch fest. It's there's some good things about it, some bad things about it, and you got to certainly deal with the bad things about it. So in reference to AI, do you think that within our lifetimes reasonably, it's going to be able to double the lifespan of human beings?
Well, depends on whether or not people, excuse me, my allergies are bad here. I think it just depends on whether or not people are going to utilize the information that they have and take that to heart and actually do it. And I'll just give you an example of what I give you sort of an analogy for. I would say almost 15 years ago, I remember sitting on a call when a company was first coming out talking about genetic testing and how that relates to people in terms of nutrition, right? And real personalized nutrition. And they were looking at muscle fiber types and all of that stuff. And I said, well, that's only good if people are going to take the information and do what they want, what their DNA is showing them, right? Like you could say to somebody, based upon your genetics, you shouldn't be eating this type of food or you should be doing that type of exercise. But if they don't like it, they're not going to do it. Does it really matter? So if the AI is telling you to do certain things with your health, right? Because computers have given us great advice. We have access to a lot of information. I don't know if it's going to help. I mean, I do think that I've heard stories of people using it to find cures for diseases or find medications that were, off-label being used for other things. We're at a very specific micro level, they've been able to solve, especially in the rare disease space. I think it's been fascinating. And I think as far as science goes, there's a lot of opportunity because, the AI can think much faster than all of us, right? It can pull the information together much quicker. And I think there is a value. I don't know about doubling or tripling our lives. I can't think of a guy's name. There's some guy who spent $1 million biohacking, doing a bunch of like really expensive biohacking, and at the end of the day, what was his name?
Familiar with the story. I don't remember his name, but lots of people are familiar with his story. Really super good.
Yeah, I had mentioned his name in an article a few weeks ago that I wrote on LinkedIn, and he spent a lot of money, and everyone's like, oh, my God, only, wealthy people can afford to do it. But at the end of the day, after a year, he didn't, biohack his life. He did not increase his lifespan at all. And if you look at, blue zones, places in the world where people live to be 100 or more, they're not doing all of these things. It's the simplicity of life. It is the simplicity of nutrition. It is the simplicity of movement and human connection and, really getting back to basics, which is why those people live to be 100 or more.
Great information. So, Stephen, back to you. I'd like, Stephen, I say it every time, but we have to have her come back to talk about these issues. So,
well, I think, Peter, one of your questions should have been, can an AI save lives? And how can it be used in the medical industry today?
Oh, I think it's very useful. In fact, that's why we're building some stuff out around that, because I want to be like a protective safety layer of education for people. I want to fill the gaps that happen, when people don't have access to this information, or they just Google something and they're, maybe they're following an influencer instead of following a healthcare professional because, number of followers doesn't give you credibility.
Well, a lot of people have the information at their fingertips today. So they can be proactive, and they could actually go out there and chat GPT, and they could ask questions regarding AI, and they almost can take I can look at the Canadian health system versus the U.S. and the Canadian health system. You got to be on top of yourself. You got to be proactive, and the doctors aren't going to do the answers for you, right? They're not going to look after your body, but AI they say that. They're able to help physicians identify cancers earlier and more accurately. And that, over the next 5 to 15 years, it's expected to become a major tool in cancer prediction, detection, and personalized treatment.
I think in a lot of other diseases, too, people talk about, like, women with PCOS. Sometimes it takes a long time for them to get a diagnosis. I mean, if we could shorten that window on the diagnosis timeline, then we can start treatment faster. The only problem we have in the United States is that the insurance companies would rather delay your treatment instead of giving you the best thing that works quickly. They'd rather delay, deny instead of doing an intervention that, when done well early on, can prolong your life. So I think that's an intersection of real science and policy, right? And profits.
Yeah, well, I just think AI is here to stay, and how we use it is going to be interesting, and how it's going to be incorporated in the world of medicine. But I think it's something, like you said, you want to stay on top of it, Felicia. This is going to really separate the wannabe influencers out there, which you're not. You're a difference maker, all right? And in terms of credibility, so I just at the end of the day, we're all looking to live longer and healthier. Longevity, let's talk about that, because the secret of life right now is joy, peace, health, happiness. We thrive to live and have joy in our life. I think that that's important for longevity. Can you talk a little bit about longevity in terms of what's your secret sauce, right?
Mm-hmm.
And patience and how you live your life?
Oh, would you like me to elaborate on that?
Yeah. But
well, when I turned 50, which was 9 years ago, I was like, man, okay, I'm at 50, and I'm like, well, if I'm lucky, my goal is to live to be 100, so that means I got 50 years left to live. How am I going to do it? Like, I think about a countdown clock going backwards. And so, I got lucky. I started working with El Nutra at the time, and they had their Prolon fasting mimicking diet protocol, and that was all about like longevity and autophagy and reducing the rate of telomere, reduction, or compression. And, I got very intrigued by that. And, at about the same time, that's when the blue zones was first becoming a thing, and people were talking about that and understanding why people live to be 100 and more. And so I was just really fascinated, by all of that. And, looking at, again, like you look at those places in the world where people live to be 100 or more, and what do they have in common? They eat predominantly plant-based foods with small amounts of animal source proteins. Some cultures, they drink, others they don't. Some smoke, others they don't. But really, reduction of harmful substances. They move every day. Movement is not necessarily structured in a gym, but there is some type of movement. They live in a community where they feel like a part of a community. In a lot of those cultures, they have intergenerational living, where the older adults live amongst, the little ones, and they all work together. They take care of each other. They have a sense of community. There's things, whether it's nature, whether it's culture, and it's just really fascinating, to me, like how do we aspire to be like that? The places in the world where people live to be 100 are Okinawa, Japan. You have Loma Linda, California, which the reason Loma Linda is on there is because they're made up of Seventh-day Adventists that, are vegetarians. They don't smoke, they don't drink, and so you have multi-generations of people living their life like that. You've got the Nicoya Peninsula in Latin America. You have Icaria, Greece, and you have Sardinia in Italy. And so, again, like those are the main components of what everybody sort of had in common were those things that I just outlined. So, could we do more of that? Can we, practicing gratitude? We hear so much about things like gratitude, not being lonely, right? Having friendships, having companionship, not being isolated. If you think about what is the worst form of punishment other than the death penalty in the United States, solitary confinement, right? It's not healthy to be confined, right? We saw that during COVID. A lot of people had mental health issues from not being connected. There are a lot of people that those effects have still lingered, because they don't know how to be connected or be around other people. But humans are very social animals. We are meant to be with other people. And, I even think about when I came to New Orleans, I got rid of my car. That was the whole thing. I moved here with intention because I believed that this city holds the key to longevity because it has all the ingredients that I need to live longer, and healthier. So I don't have a car. I walk 5 to 7 miles a day. Yes, there's great food here, and there's a lot of unhealthy food here, and there's a lot of drinking here. But I still cook most of my meals. I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I don't smoke. And my exercise classes are, either going outside or I'm grateful that at a gym I go to, they have dance classes. Dancing is among the best forms of exercise you can do. I just went to something the other day called a Fedodo, which is like a Cajun music and dancing fest, like a thing that people do in their communities all the time, but they did it like at a venue. And, it was like great. The 70-year-old guys are coming up and teaching me how to do the dancing their way, and they're dancing in circles, and, and it's joyous. Like that is what, at a simple level, like that's what it's about. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money to do that, right? Listening to music makes you dance. Movement, right? Like throughout cultures on different continents, people have had music and dancing as part of the human experience. And, those are the types of things, with joy. Can you be exposed to art, right? Do you get joy out of seeing art? Do you get joy out of creating art? Like I get joy out of cooking food for other people. That is my creative expression. I love to host dinner parties. I love to make, the holidays, because that gives me joy, right? To be able to give back and do for other people and see that they are enjoying something, As long as you're not harming somebody else in that process, I think we can all learn from that. Doing acts of kindness for others, that goes a long way too. And I also think that not retiring is important, because I think we need to keep our brains going. And I'm not saying work yourself to the bone, but I do think that having a sense of purpose and meaning, and, I'm very much intrigued by aging brains and what we can do to minimize, destruction of, brain tissue and brain cells and brain connections. And, to maintain brain health is also incredibly important, and we know physical activity has a lot and nutrition has a lot to do with that.
Peter's here. I'm not sure if we lost Stephen. Stephen, are you there?
Oh, I wasn't sure if we all got disconnected.
I'm here. No, I'm here. I'm just listening. And, I want to give this, some thought here, because there's a lot of young people in our industry that are, they're coming out of a family of, and where they've been maybe spoon-fed, that they haven't learned accountability, right? They everything has been given to them, right? And now here they are in the workforce, right? And, they're in a structured environment, so maybe you can share a little bit of what your experience has been, and how it can help them understand, what leadership roles they should look for in a leader to help guide them and inspire them to bring out the best in their abilities.
Well, sometimes we don't get to pick the people that we work for. So I've had great bosses, and I've had really crappy bosses. And I've had, people I've worked with at companies that were very honorable, and I've had other people that are not. So it's, I think it's challenging. I will say, volunteering with organizations is a great way to do something that's cause-related that makes you feel good. I found that when I did volunteer work within certain organizations, I got to do certain skills that maybe jobs didn't allow me to do. So it could be organizing a fundraiser, right? Being on the planning committee for a fundraiser and everything that goes into that. So maybe taking those skills and tapping into that. I think something that has, people don't do a lot of reading anymore, but, reading books about people that have been, successful, right, who are role models, or if you don't want to reading books about them or biographies or things that they write, manifestos, maybe it's about, or biographies, autobiographies. I think maybe it's like seeking those types of things. I mean, some of the most, in terms of leadership, I mean, I really drew a lot from my dad. I really learned a lot from him because he really was, in my mind, a giant, right? A mighty giant. But I also saw how he impacted other people. We could look at people in politics, and, some are better than others. And I feel like that's just become such a gross space. We could look at business leaders and learn from them. I think the important thing is always that ego doesn't win, at the end of the day, and doing acts of kindness for others really makes you, feel good. So, finding, work or leadership out of, and the whole idea of entitlement, it's if people legit have to take care of themselves, there is no entitlement, right? Because there is not just this, parents don't have like endless bank accounts to just, support children into infinity, right? So there's this sense of self and learning, the value of a dollar and how much work goes into, how many hours do you have to work in order to buy X, Y, or Z? I mean, that's what I used to say to my kids all the time. When you can afford to buy your own iPhone, you can buy an iPhone, I mean, there is a value of letting children, get jobs at early ages. As I started off saying, I started working when I was 12 years old. I mean, there is no getting around that. I mean, it can't just be about like going out to eat and shopping, hanging out with friends and posting selfies. Like there has to be some value that you're bringing to the world, or else you're just going to get left behind. But there's definitely value in meeting people, and being in organizations and, finding something that drives your passion or finding out what your best skill is. Like I said earlier, that I started teaching at a community college to get over my fear of public speaking, and lo and behold, I've become somebody who has ended up doing quite a bit of public speaking in my lifetime. And so, sometimes something that you are intimidated by could be your secret strength, right? That could be the thing that you do excel at. And so I think maybe in the course of our lifetime, even in childhood, for various reasons, we may not get exposed to things. I think expose yourself to new experiences and be a sponge and be willing to learn, and don't always think that you know the best way to do things. I think being a good listener is very important, learning how to be quiet in a conversation and pause and let other people speak is important. I spend a lot of time listening. I know I've been talking my head off because that's the point of this, but I do, when I'm in conversations with people, a lot of time I'm the one who does a lot of the active listening because that's what I'm trained to do.
Yeah, but I
and
think
then
that
you
you've
extract what you need. Yeah.
Yeah, you've hit so many good points, and facing your fears, and not being accountable, and like living your life with ambition, passion, desire, going out there and being doing something meaningful, but also something kind. Right? You've touched so many good points, Felicia, and you're such a good person. And I don't know if hopefully this show brings people a little bit closer to you, and to Alberti, what you've accomplished, because I know your best years are ahead of you in your life, but I'm surprised that you never really got into clinical psychology and or social working, because you are just a tremendous role model for so many women.
Well, I thank you. I'm definitely very interested in public health, and that's something I'm very passionate about, and I feel like I've had lots of opportunities to touch people in that way, and that's sort of where I'm focused a little bit right now. That's definitely, I feel like I can have more value than just a one-on-one, right, is to help drive change and policy change and providing people access to credible information that they otherwise wouldn't get, because it's not, it doesn't do any good for others if it's just locked up in my brain, is it?
Is there any advice you would give your younger self if you were 18 years of age again?
Gosh, maybe I would have tried to go to, I don't know, I wouldn't even have said medical school, because now I tell students don't even go to medical school, go become a PA. No, I don't think so, because I would not have, I don't. I can't look back and change the things that I did. I think I did. No, I think I've lived, and I say like lived a good life. I think I've always been a good person. So I didn't.
Well, it sounds like you are like Frank Sinatra. Yeah, I did it.
A lot of great people have come out of Jersey. Don't get me started. All the great musicians that have come out of Jersey. I know you can take the girl out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the girl. But I think everything that I have done has contributed to and planted, little not seeds, but I think everything is foundational. So I never look at anything as shoulda, coulda, woulda. I would tell young people to live your life without regret. That's the only thing maybe I regret that I didn't do was do more traveling when I was younger. Like to do a junior year abroad. I don't know if my parents would have let me do that, but, I think like that's the type of thing that I would have liked to maybe have taken a risk and done other, work. But my parents, I was going off of the guidance of my father, and he was, definitely, very prescriptive with what he thought was best for, how we should, live our lives. So I can't, it's not that I really felt, I had certain decisions, but it was different, in like 1989 when I was out of college, and, women still didn't have like equality in the workplace. So there's a whole lot to change, that the world has changed significantly. So with regards to that, I do tell people to live your life without regret and try everything, that you want to. Again, as long as you're not harming somebody else or harming yourself, then I think, sometimes taking risks or doing things that maybe your family wouldn't approve, but, other people are telling you, encouraging you to do. I think, our parents had limited bandwidth of knowledge, that was only based on their experience, right, other people around them. And now kids have access to the internet and they can learn more. I only knew about a handful of careers when I was in high school, right, or in college. I didn't know about all the things. And quite honestly, the things that I have ended up doing were never things that I could ever have imagined doing when I first changed careers. So how about that, right? Like I didn't know I'd ever host a TV show, and I didn't know I would, be traveling around the United States doing interviews, doing, spokesperson work for brands and for products. And how would I have known to do that?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have.
The best years are still ahead of you. And
I got plenty of good stuff coming up. Don't worry. I got my sleeves all like rolled up. I've got a lot to continue to still do and help people live healthier lives.
Yeah, that's quite amazing just to listen to your passion, and that's very inspired by your journey. And I thank you so much. And I'm sure our audience out there is going, "Wow, this woman has so much information. She's done so much. Like she's too happy for life." All right, I'd be proud. Is your dad still around? Your mom and dad?
No, my father passed away 3 years ago. My mom is still around. We just went to Florida and celebrated her 80th birthday. But, I will say, like, one of the things that I say this all the time, and I say it with, like, love and kindness and respect, but, when my dad retired, he had a very and I wrote about this recently, so I'm not saying anything disrespectful, but he had a rapid decline in his health after he stopped working. And, to go from being such an important person to having no sense of purpose, along with it being COVID, and even before COVID came around, I remember my dad just wasn't himself. And I said, had you ever envisioned what your life would look like when you retired? And he said, no. All he thought about, because all we talk about is having money in the bank. We don't look at what's best for us from a day-to-day, from a psychological, mental health, sense of purpose, physical act, like we don't think about that stuff. And I think that these are important things because, when the idea of retiring at 65 and most people didn't live past 75, well, now people are living to be, many decades past that. So I think how you choose to live it and what you do leading up to that is, can extend your life. And I see these ladies on Instagram and that have, in their 60s and 70s and their 80s, like started to embrace weight training and exercise. I just love those stories. I just love that. People that are like doing things they never did and how it is making them stronger and healthier and giving them confidence. And, I think there isn't as much ageism as there used to be. And so I'm kind of embracing it because I want to, I want to tap into that, like professionally. That's where I've sort of been at for the last, 9 or 10 years now. That's where like longevity and lifestyle medicine all come into play, showing people that there is, there is a very long lifespan that we can have, and we want to have a good health span to go with that lifespan. So what are the things we need to do to maintain independence, maintain, mental health, or, not just mental health, but like mental and cognitive function? What are things we could do to maintain physical function, right? What are the ways that we can keep people out of nursing homes, and yeah.
Well, or keep people from being lonely, and
exactly.
But your father's he's listening, he's up there, he's watching, all right, and it's a beautiful thing, and I know he'd be so proud of you, and he what you've accomplished and what you're going to be doing in the future. You're lucky. You have treasured memories of him, and it's a beautiful thing. And
thank you.
Yeah. So and I think ageism is alive and well. Unfortunately, it's not going away. Ageism. There's a lot of people out there, especially in our industry, that think people in their 60s or 70s should not be in our industry anymore, at least not with their company. And that unfortunately still exists. But I have been inspired by a lot of people we've interviewed on this radio show who are in their 70s, like Mark Blumenthal. All right, from American Botanical Council. He's my Moses. He's my inspiration of climbing the mountain. And and there's other people out there besides him that age. I define age, and those who say, "Oh, when are you going to retire?" Don't even listen to that language. All right,
no. I say retirement's a dirty R word.
It's oh my! I just those people need a life. Whoever thinks about that. All right, because maybe they're happy at their own job, and and they need to move on. All right, so but I still think my best years, your best years, Peter's best years, still way ahead of us. And
agreed. Agreed.
For us, we wouldn't be doing this show because it's something we're trying to make a difference in this industry and around the world.
And I love that, and it's great. We need more people like all of us, right, to help others.
We're the good people out there, trying to show us people that through kindness and goodness and peace and health and that we can enjoy life, right? And we're trying to help you, right? So I think that's why you're on the show, and that's why you're North Star, and that's why you're paving the way for other people to follow your footsteps. And we need more Felicia Stolers out there in this world. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Peter, anything else that you like to add?
No, this has been fascinating. It went super duper quick. I know there's so much more information that Felicia can give us. And Stephen, I keep telling you we want to have these guests back. We have to definitely have her
back on the world of politics and where we are today.
Oh,
yeah, right. we could do that another time.
Yeah.
But this has been really exciting. Probably the biggest thing I want to know is where do people find out anything that you've worked on or working on? Do you have you said you're working on a website?
I mean, I have a website, but honestly, I need to update it. But in the meantime, I think the best place for people to find out what I'm doing is either connect with me on LinkedIn. I think, I'm making a concerted effort to push content out there once a week, and I'm really writing on the longevity and lifestyle medicine space on a regular basis. So I think that is the best way. Facebook or Instagram, I really,
Is there only one Felicia Stoler? So for those people that are spelling it right?
Yeah, there's only one Felicia Stoler. Yes, Dr. Felicia Stoler, spelled FELICIA STOLER.
Perfect. And that's on LinkedIn, so they can direct message you there, and we'll make sure that we put this in the show notes as well. Stephen, fascinating stuff. We want to have you come back, talk about AI, and we didn't even talk about weight loss and Ozempic and drugs and everything else as far as long term. And
do you want to? Do you guys want to maybe do that on another episode? Because I don't know if you're going to edit this or not.
Nope. We're not going to. We don't worry about editing it, but I will definitely make sure that we force Stephen to have you back to talk about those things.
Oh, okay. No, because it's I'm just thinking about the time and how long something would be continuous for somebody to listen to. Good. Huh? Yeah.
We're good. Perfect.
Well, yeah,
Stephen, I'll wrap it up. Wrap it up.
Yep. Yeah, this is a great introduction of another interview with you, and because I'm just there's so much information just to absorb on this particular show. When we listen to this, is this going to be one of those top 10 interviews that we've had over the last 100+ interviews that we've done. So, congratulations! It's like wow, I can't believe. And to our listeners out there, I hope you've taken in, all the goodness from this interview in terms of inspiration to be able to go out there and wake up each day and really go out there and be kind and good to other people and believe in yourself that you can make a difference. You're a masterpiece in this world. The good Lord has created you in a sense for you to be who you want to be and to go out there and make a difference. And just know you are a shining star, and you go out there and tell people, and by action, thoughts, words, and deeds, all the good things that you can do to help others in need. So once again, thank you so much for listening to KISC My Health Radio. And Felicia, once again, thank you for being the North Star person that you are.
Thank you for having me.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Felicia Stoler. We'll catch up next time on Building Fortunes Radio. Yep, and then KISCMyHealth.com. If you go to KISCMyHealth.com, make sure you share with others. We'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to the KISC My Health Radio show on Building Fortunes Radio. Thanks for listening. This KISC My Health Radio show is brought to you by Stephen Lukawski. Stephen is known as the Cranberry King, universally known as Captain Cran Man. Stephen has over 30 years of experience working with manufacturers and marketers of dietary supplements and natural ingredients to make this world a healthier and a better place. You can check out Stephen Lukawski on LinkedIn and on the KISCMyHealth.com website. We are glad you listened in. Spread the word and check out previous KISC My Health Radio episodes. Bye for now. It's been our privilege to have you listen in. At Building Fortunes Radio, we wish you the success you deserve and are willing to work for. Now go make the world a better place.